Hey YouTube, this is Dr. J, and today we are going to talk about Kal-El versus Clark Kent, or is identification of giftedness necessary, especially when we're dealing with a homeschool student. You guys probably know my stance. I believe that it is important to identify gifted children, but I'm going to talk about why I think it's important. The first reason why I think it's important to identify gifted children is because I think everybody should have as much information about themselves as possible. And we as parents should have as much information about our children as possible. And back to my Man of Steel analogy, my Superman analogy. In the movie Man of Steel, we see that Clark Kent, or Kal-El, as Clark Kent, he struggled because he knew that he was different. And his father eventually had to take him to the vehicle that he was, found in, and really explain to him as much of his history as he knew, because he knew something was different about him. And we see that in gifted children. They know that there's something different about them, especially when they have some of those gifted characteristics like emotional intensity. They understand that not everybody is as deeply affected by this particular issue as they are. And why are they reading this book, and they're crying and emotionally drained at the end of the book, and other people can read the book and it's fine? Why are they sitting in a movie and they can hardly take it, and they're bawling their eyes out, and everybody else is fine? Why are they getting different things out of a reading than everybody else is getting? Sometimes it's even, why are they getting this information quickly, and it's taking, other people 6, 7, 8 repetitions to get that same information? They know that they're different. And sometimes if you weren't told that by people that love you and care about you, you can start to feel like there's something wrong with you. Start to feel like maybe you're a little bit crazy. And so I think that it's important to let children know that there's nothing wrong with them, and they're not alone. Even though they may only be part of 10% of the population, even if they're on the extreme of gifted and they're profoundly gifted, and there might only be 2% of the population that's like them, there's over 6 billion people on the planet. There's a lot of people like them. So even though they may be unique in their neighborhood or their city or their larger community, they're not alone. I think that's important. I think it's important for parents to understand, so that they can start to, get different techniques. It is so freeing when I have conversations with other parents of gifted children, because we bond so quickly, because we can sit back and say, your child won't wear jeans either. Oh my gosh. Wow. You also have to cut all the tags out of your children's clothes. You also have to go and, buy 17 books on this topic because one book wasn't enough for your child. Wow, it's freeing even for parents to be able to say, this is okay. Even though not every parent is having this sort of situation happen in their household, my household is okay. And I can learn from other people, and I can help other people through the process. I think that is very healthy. Another reason why I think it's important to identify children as gifted is because gifted children have a very high rate of misdiagnosis, especially when the parents, don't know that they're gifted, or the people, psychologists or psychiatrists that they're working with, don't really recognize giftedness. Happens often when schools don't recognize the child as gifted or recognize giftedness. Misdiagnosis with things like ADD, ADHD, Asperger's, social anxiety disorder. Not saying that those things never occur in gifted children. They can occur in gifted children. But a lot of times, normal behavior for a gifted child can look like and mimic things like being on the autism spectrum because of their passion and their intensity of focus when they're working on something that they really enjoy. People go, oh, that's autism. So they are at a risk of misdiagnosis if they don't understand the label or the parents don't understand that the child is gifted. A lot of times, a lot of things that I found is that a lot of parents aren't comfortable with identifying their children as gifted because they don't like the label. You know, there is a lot of backlash to the label. Oh, your child is gifted, huh? Is that right? So are you saying my child's not gifted? Okay. Back to Man of Steel. Now, I'm not going to put in too many spoilers because I know some people maybe haven't seen it yet. I don't know why. It's great. Go see it. But, okay. The thing is, Superman did not name himself Superman. Okay. Other people called him Superman. He didn't give himself that label. His name is Kal-El. When I did some of the earlier videos, like, you know, Superman versus Batman, if I would have said Kal-El versus Batman, a lot of people might not even clicked. They might not have even gotten it. Because a lot of people, especially those who are not comic nerds, like me, they don't know that Superman's real name is Kal-El. Okay. So, if I say Superman, we all have a shared understanding of at least somewhat what that means. That's the same thing with gifted. If we try to call it something else, oh, the highly inquisitive child. Okay, that may sound better, less intimidating, whatever, but that there's not a shared meaning around that. So I get that it's not the best word to describe the situation, but that's the word that we have. Okay. You didn't come up with it. I didn't come up with it. Superman didn't come up with his own name. Okay. But that's what we got. That's where the shared understanding is around. So it's fine to use it. You aren't bragging. You aren't, trying to put something on your child. That's just the label that we have. So you can use it. Now, sometimes, people are a little bit hesitant about identifying their children as gifted because they say, well, we haven't done formal testing. Well, I read a study about 5 years ago, and if I'm able to find it again, I'll make sure to link it. But basically, it was out of Australia, and they did a study where they asked parents if their child was gifted. They asked teachers if these particular children were gifted, and then they did a formal IQ test on the children. They found that parents were right 80% of the time. So 80% of the time, if a parent identified the child as gifted, the child was gifted. Teachers were right about 40% of the time. Teachers were more likely to identify a bright child as gifted or miss a gifted child altogether. So once you read the characteristics associated with gifted children, if you sit back and you go, you know what, most of those apply to my child. Maybe not all of them, but most of those things, I see that in my child. I would say my child is gifted. Fine. You have an 80% chance of being right. So go with that. You don't have to have a formal test to do it. Now, there are some times when formal testing is absolutely recommended. If you suspect your child has a learning disability, then I would highly recommend formal testing. Like I told you guys, we suspected my oldest was dyslexic. We did not realize the extent of his dyslexia until we had formal testing. There are also some types of disabilities that you can really only get a good diagnosis on from a professional. My eye issues, like eye tracking, eye teaming, convergence, you need an official assessment in order for that to be correctly identified. Sometimes auditory processing disorder, you need a formal assessment for something like that. So there are times when a formal assessment is needed. there are some programs that are designed specifically for children, for gifted children, that a lot of people participate and get a lot of good out of it. Sometimes those programs require a formal IQ test. So if you are going to want to find a group for your child, and that's really, really important for your child to know that there's other people like them and meet other people like them, then formal testing, yes. If you suspect your child has a disability, but you're not really sure, or you're not really sure about the extent, then formal testing, yes. But I will throw in the caveat that you really want to look for a psychologist who is used to working with gifted children, because there are some quirks that happen with gifted children, because if people aren't used to gifted children, they can miss things. For instance, my child would not have been identified, none of my children would have been identified as dyslexic when they were younger, because if they just did a basic test without somebody who didn't also take into account IQ, because they were at grade level, above grade level in their reading, and generally dyslexia is identified if kids are having struggle with reading. But because we were working with people who were a person who was very skilled in working with gifted children, had a long history of working with gifted children, we were able to get proper diagnoses. Because gifted children deal a lot with misdiagnosis, I highly recommend finding somebody who understands gifted children and has a lot of experience in working with gifted children. And not just experience working with them, but experiencing and advocating for gifted children. You want to look for that when you're choosing somebody to do your child's testing. Another reason why I like identification is because giftedness doesn't go away. So it's not that a child is gifted until they reach 18 and then all of a sudden they're just the average Joe. That doesn't happen. You're born gifted and you are gifted throughout your life. So this is not something that's going to go away when they finish, high school or college or get a job. They're always going to be gifted. They're always going to function in society a little bit differently. They're always going to experience the world a little bit different. So giving them the tools that are necessary to understand the nuance of the label, understand that the label doesn't make them, it's just a part of them. I think that is something that is best done in a loving home. Another reason why I think it's important is because giftedness tends to be genetic, and I found a lot of parents who go, "Wow, I'm gifted. I secretly thought that something might have been a little bit wrong with me, or I thought, oh my goodness, I have made my kids quirky." Well, you kind of did make them quirky, but in a good way. And so it can be therapeutic for you as the parent as well, to get a bit of a broader understanding of yourself as well. So there's one more thing, and that is, I am not saying that just because a child is Kal-El, just because a child is identified as Superman, they have to walk around with an S on their chest so that everybody else knows it as well. Sometimes it is better to just be Clark Kent. They don't have to, and you don't have to formally announce in the middle of the grocery store, hey, gifted kid walking through, hello, they're gifted. You don't necessarily have to go to the baseball coach and say, hey, coach, just want to let you know my kid's gifted. Don't necessarily have to, go to the swim team like, hey, that one's gifted, so he'll probably swim faster than everybody else. No, he won't. Though sometimes just being Clark Kent is enough. Not everybody needs to know your child is gifted, just like in Man of Steel, parents, realize that sometimes there can be some disadvantages to being identified as gifted. Sometimes people aren't ready to embrace gifted in your child. So you have to make sure that you also manage that aspect of it too. Yes, they will always know that they are Kel-El. It will be empowering for them and empowering for you, but it is not always necessary for people to see anything beyond Clark Kent. Hope that helps. This is Dr. J at DAJedu. Bye-bye.